Welcome to Tambourine Chronicles. My name is Kenora. So, God is telling you to resign from your job. That is no joke, especially when you're depending on that check to pay the bills, keep a roof over your head, and get some food. This can be really scary, and it is a real test of faith. Today, I share stories of God telling people to resign from their jobs. My hope is that these stories will build up your faith and help you to obey God, even though you might be terrified of quitting your job. Let's jump into today's story.
When God is calling you to do something, he starts off, or I'm gonna just speak for me. When God is telling you to do something, from what I've experienced, he'll start off real calm, chill, cool, calm, collected. But then the urges or the signs, the confirmations, the Holy Spirit will strengthen. And it'll get to a point to where you can't deny the fact that he's calling you to do this thing. He will not allow you to have peace. So that's what happened to me when I was teaching in 2019. I literally did not have peace. I was at work crying on my lunch break, and it was so stressful for me because I did not know why I was crying. Like, I was a teacher in college. I loved kids. I have always loved kids. And to me, teaching is such a fun, easy, I mean, it ain't easy because the kids are a lot to do it, but it's easy in a sense of you take them to lunch and you got a free period. When y'all go to recess, I mean, you're playing outside. That's not that stressful. When they go to elective, I was a second grade teacher. When they went to elective, I went back to my classroom, graded papers, listened to music. Like, you just chill for an hour. You drop them off to lunch, you chill for another hour. It's from 7 to 2. 2 o'clock, you're done for the day. There are so many teacher plans. Like, there's just so many perks to being a teacher, right? So I didn't understand why I kept crying in the car. Like, why am I so unhappy? Like, it's not, and it's like I'm happy, but I'm not at peace. That's the only way to explain it. I'm not at peace. And it was because I was not in alignment. It was because I was not doing what God has called me to do. And the thing is, the tears increased. Like, it got to a point to where I started crying on the way to work, and I started crying at lunch, and then I would get off work and I'm still crying because I'm thinking about the fact I got to go back tomorrow. And it's just like, why am I so unhappy? But it's because I knew what God was telling me to do. And then when I did transition into doing content creating full time, of course, it was still very scary for me because it's just like bills. Like, content creator full time, like being a full time content creator, this is constantly living by faith every single day, not knowing where your next collab is going to come from, not knowing if the videos is going to go viral, if you're going to get paid for it or not. It's constantly living by faith. So that was scary. So it's being obedient in spite of feeling scared, for real. So, like, when it comes to what God tells us to do, we think it's just going to be this easy, beautiful process. But no, it's you living by faith every single day. You trusting in God every single day. You being obedient in spite of what your flesh is telling you to do, because your flesh and your mind is going to tell you to do what's safe. And that's continue to teach and get your salary. But no, every single day, waking up and deciding to do what God has called you to do. And then you'll see, and then with you doing that every day, eventually you see his faithfulness, and you see how he makes ways out of no ways. And then the timing that he called me to do it was perfect, because I stopped teaching September 2019. COVID hit March 2020, and then the whole world shut down, and everybody was at home doing what? Looking at online content. And I had been doing online content full time since September 2019. So it's just like his timing is also so perfect. I didn't know COVID was going to come, 6 months later, but he knew the perfect timing to transition me out. And once that happened, like, my platforms took off. I got monetized by YouTube shortly after. And it's just like, I've been a full-time content creator since then, but it was easy for me to keep my eyes on him, because if God don't make a way, what's going to happen? Because this is scary. So it's just like, I'm being obedient, keeping my eyes on you, because that's my only option, because I can't go back to crying every day.
So look, some of y'all, God may be telling y'all to quit your job, and you're like, what? Let me tell you a story time. So back in October of 2019, I was meeting with two physicians, okay? They were my physician mentors. Sunray had a plan. Sunray was going to medical school, okay? I was going to become a doctor, period. Nothing was going to stop me. During that meeting, I started hearing a voice. They talking, but I started hearing a voice say to me, it's time for you to quit your job. Prepare to quit your job. Just kept repeating it. And I'm going to be real with y'all. In 2019, I was deep in my sin, so I was smoking weed. So I'm like, yo, I know the weed ain't this strong. So fast forward, by the end of the day, I realized that it was God talking to me, okay? And he told me that he was going to teach me to be still in him. And he said my last day would be February 14, 2020. Now, he told me to be still, but what did? I'm going to medical school. I have a plan. So I'm going ahead, signing up for all these volunteer hours, doing all of this. We all know what happened in March of 2020. So long story short, God is bringing me on here today to tell someone that the Lord may be having you quit your job because you don't know what's up ahead. He may have a new opportunity for you. Just like me, a complete career shift. But you need to be obedient and listen to what he's saying because you don't know what he's protecting you from. Okay?
If God is telling you to resign, it's because he knows what is ahead. It may be that he knows that if you don't leave now, you will be out of a job. And so he may be just trying to position you to have what you need. He is not going to tell you the next step until you do what he told you to do. In these two stories, God was giving these women instructions because he knew COVID was coming. He knew the world was about to shut down. In the first story, her obedience to be a full-time content creator was perfect timing. She got monetized in 2020. What's the moral of the story? Obey God and resign because he is all-knowing. You are not. He knows what's coming in the future. You don't. So we have to trust him.
God told me to quit my job. I was actually going to make this video yesterday when I actually formally sent in the letter of resignation, but I was honestly just super distraught. I was super distraught. I didn't know what to do. I just wanted to be obedient. He had been telling me to do this for a very long time. He had been telling me that my time at this job was done for a very long time, and I just knew he was telling me to apply for another job. I just knew he was telling me to do something else that he wasn't telling me to do that part. He was preparing my heart to leave this job. So at first, like I said, I'm thinking that he's trying to tell me to apply to another job. But at this point, I've applied to months ago. I've applied to a whole bunch of jobs, haven't heard nothing back, went to interviews, didn't hear nothing back. I'm like, okay, maybe he wants to do it a different way. Maybe he wants me to wait a little while and then he'll give me another job. That was not the case. The Lord finally confirmed within the last week or so. I had already been super uncomfortable at this job at this point. Again, knowing that my time here was up, I had already started getting super uncomfortable. I wasn't able to do my job right. No matter what I did, I was messing up or I was forgetting things. It literally did not matter, but it was just very evident that the Holy Spirit was telling me, you need to leave without knowing where you're going next. That was the hardest part. That was the hard part. That is the hardest part, is knowing that this is the first time God has ever called me out of a position without knowing what's next, without having a job lined up, without some sort of provision. But I kept delaying the process, and he finally gave me this one last push, this nudge, this confirmation that you need to go, by using somebody at my job that I could have never imagined. And we had a very uncomfortable conversation, and she was so sweet, and she poured into me the whole time. But she expressed, I don't think you're supposed to be here anymore. And I already knew that I wasn't. This woman is not even a believer, y'all. So it was just so evidently God. So anyway, I'm making this video to say that I have no clue what's next. I think there's some things lined up that God has for me. I'm excited to see where I go. I'm excited to see what he's doing. I'm excited.
Beginning of the year, your girl got a brand new job. This is very important to know for this story because I went years without a job, 2018 to 2022. Finally went back to work, and 3 months into the job, the Lord tells me to put in my 2 weeks notice. Very frustrated, very confused because I was getting used to having money in my pocket again, finally feeling independent and getting ready to stand on my own 2 feet, just for the Lord to take it away from me. To my friends for encouragement, to let them know what's going on, and instead of encouraging me, they make me question the Lord by saying, God is a God of order, and he wouldn't have you do it that way. The Lord wouldn't have you quit your job and not have any money. The Lord wouldn't want you to not be able to take care of your kids. The Lord wouldn't want you to do that, even though I know for a fact this is something the Lord wanted me to do. I ended up putting in my 2 weeks notice. I got a better job 3 months later, not only paying me more, but it also opened the door for me to get a brand new house. Not because of how much I was making, because I had really good connects at the job I got. The moral of this story is never tell someone what God wouldn't have them do. We never know what the Lord is going to require of us until he requires it.
Resigning without knowing your next step is scary, especially when you have children depending on you. Last year, at the beginning of October, God told me that October is the last month. That wasn't a surprise to me because I knew that when I accepted the position a year and a half before, God said that the job was temporary. I resigned and I trusted God to provide for my family, and He has been providing for us. Psalm 37:12 says, "Once I was young, and now I am old, yet I have never seen the godly abandoned or their children begging for bread." God will provide for you.
Will you listen when God calls you? 7 years ago, I was making great money working at the bank. And on my way home one day, God called me and spoke to me and told me to quit my job of great pay, benefits, and security for my family to start a fitness program at a park in Covina. I had no idea why he wanted me to do it, and it was never my intention to do anything like that. Well, a few months later, our outdoor boot camp that we now call Lifted continued to grow, and we had to choose whether or not to move Lifted indoors to keep it growing and do God's will, but we would end up losing our house in the process because we couldn't afford both. Or I could go back to a 9 to 5 and quit the journey that God had put me on. Well, we chose to keep God's plan alive, and my family and I moved into the back of our gym in Azusa in a 10x10 supply room with no shower, having to microwave water just to sponge bath our kids in a laundry bucket. 7 years later, and after many more roller coasters, we now have a small apartment that we live in, and I'm standing in front of Lifted today. Through Lifted, through this place, we play Christ-centered music, we encourage our clients, and we've provided thousands of people the opportunity to come through here, and we have led more people to Jesus than we ever thought possible. Philippians 3:12-14 says, "Not that I've already obtained all this, or I've already arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me." Brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it. But one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on towards the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Why am I telling you all this? Because when God called me and He spoke to me, and even if I was terrified to do it, I still desired to answer God's call. With the countless people that we have led back to Christ, all of those blessings of them going to heaven were on the other side of someone else's obedience to answer God's call. So my question to you is, when God calls you, are you going to answer?
Y'all, I want y'all to understand something. When God says that He is going to provide, you better trust and believe that He is going to do just that. Because I am a walking testimony. First of all, I quit my job 2 years ago to pursue a baking business. I'm a girl that used to not even be able to bake a box of brownies, let alone pursue a business. So I had no knowledge in this business whatsoever. But as you can see, God really did bless me with the talent. I just didn't know I had it. It's Fat Girl Snacks, by the way. Fat Girl Snacks on Instagram. Now, before I started my baking journey, I was literally going through hell at my job. Like, I started having anxiety attacks. One day I had an anxiety attack so bad that I had to be admitted to a hospital. Never had anxiety before, like ever. So that was the last straw for me, because I'm like, all right, now this job is starting to interfere with my mental health, and that's a no-go for me. Like, I don't care what the job is paying. And that's another video for another day. The pay does not matter, because I wouldn't let this job go because the pay was so great, but God had forced my hand to let it go. But anyways, I was so depressed, seeking therapy and doing things I've never done before, and I was just like, you know what? Let me get on my knees and pray. Now, I always pray, but this was before I was deep in my faith like how I am now. So I prayed. I was like, God, please reveal to me what I'm supposed to be doing, because I'm so unhappy right now and it's not fulfilling. I'm not being fulfilled by this job. I know for a fact I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm not supposed to be sitting behind a desk for the rest of my life. So please reveal to me what I should be doing. And I kid you not, like a week or two later, I started baking. I started baking out of nowhere. And like I said, I didn't know how to bake a box of brownies. I always knew how to cook amazingly, right? But I never knew how to bake. At least I didn't know I knew how to bake. So as I started getting further into my baking, I started posting my work on Instagram, and I started getting customers like nothing. Like, I was getting customers like it was no tomorrow. So my husband was like, you know, God revealed this to you for a reason. You might as well make it do what it do and pursue it full time. But me being me at the time, I was still kind of skeptical, because I'm like, all right, then that means he would be taking care of me until I can really, match my income with my business. And I didn't want him taking care of me, even though he's my husband, because society puts such a big stigma on, when a woman is a stay-at-home wife and the man is taking care of all of the bills. But that's another video for another day. Y'all might as well stay tuned for
my job. God called me out of my job. And the reason why he called me out of my job is because he showed me I was like the Israelites. Before David became king, the Israelites wanted God to give them a king because they wanted to be like all the other nations around them. And even though God told them about the consequences, they still wanted a king, and God decided to give it to them. Now, it had been a year since I've been working a job because of my previous job, I got laid off. And I knew then that I got laid off because it was in God's plan. He wanted me to step out and to do things that he's been asking me to do, but I didn't have the faith to do so. So praying for my most recent job, I prayed for it because I wanted stability. And now my husband and I had a business. The business wasn't really doing what we wanted it to do just yet. And we're trying to walk out on faith. But honestly, y'all, I didn't have the faith like I needed to. And I kept going to God like, God, please, like, I just want a job. And after a while, the door opened to this job. And I thought it was God. I got the job and I'm working. And I realized there's a lot of facets of this job where I kind of settled. But I've only been at this job for 2 months now. And at the end of the first month, I realized I can't do this. It was hard for me to balance being a mom and being a wife. I questioned it. I said, God, was I not supposed to have this job, or are you trying to teach me something? And throughout all this time, God was talking to me, and I knew that he was, but I had so much in my mind that it was hard for me to even really understand and grasp what he was saying to me. And it wasn't until God spoke through my husband where my husband was like, babe, you need more balance, And I feel like, basically ever since you got this job, things have been a little bit different. And my husband never said for me to leave the job. When I finally sat down with God to talk to him about it, he let me know, like, you need to go. For the sake of your marriage, for the sake of your household, you have to go. Because part of me wanted to keep the job to have the extra income, but the other side of me knew that if I kept this job, my home life and my marriage and my children would suffer. Problem is that I fell right back into a place where it was hard for me to trust God with my finances. I got back to a place where I wanted stability more than I understood God's power to provide for me. So I quit my job to build, to do what God has called me to do. And I wanted to make this video to encourage other people out there, because I know that there are a lot of people where you feel like God is telling you to leave your job, but you're afraid. You're afraid that you're not going to have the consistent check. You're afraid of bills not being on time. You're afraid of stepping out and starting this brand new thing God told you to do and you don't.
Trust that when you obey and resign, there are wonderful blessings attached to it. In the first story, his obedience led to the gym called Lifted, leading people to Christ and getting people healthy. Let me grab my tambourine. In the second story, her obedience led God revealing that she had a gift to bake, and Fat Girl Snacks was birthed. In the third story, her obedience to resign means she has the blessing of being a stay-at-home mom and just focusing her time and energy on her family. We have to give God praise for these things. God is very intentional. If he tells you to resign, it's because he knows he has a wonderful plan for your life. 1 Corinthians 2 verse 9 says, but it is written, eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor have entered into the heart of man the things which God has prepared for those who love him. Step out in faith. Is God telling you to resign? Or did you resign from your job when God told you? Please share it with us. Please subscribe and drop some hearts in the comments.